Good evening and welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us for the next 30 minutes as we talk about the good, bad, and ugly of relationships. A huge shout out to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinemas, and Maxwell Construction. We are so thankful for these local businesses who have made this show possible. So whether you are listening live or online, Rock Solid Radio, helping to strengthen our community one family at a time on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.
Good evening, Eagle Country. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. This is Linda Hutchinson, and we have a great show planned for you tonight, hon. Tonight, We're going to be talking about the importance of faith in our family.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this could go down a lot of different roads tonight, but we'll try to focus in a little bit and find out just really where our conversation goes. Hey, but before we get into all of our topic, we just want to thank our sponsors for helping us do what we're doing here on Rock Solid Radio. Yeah. So a big thank you going out to Maxwell Construction, Buffalo Wings and Rings, Greendale Cinemas, and La Rosa's Pizza. So thanks, guys, for your support. And we ask all of our listeners out there to help us out by frequenting those places. So thank you.
You know, hon, the role of faith in our family, if you're out there listening in Eagle Country and you grew up in the church and this is something that's just very common to you, you might be tempted to turn us off and think, oh, I got that. Please stay tuned, because I think that you will be encouraged by what we're going to talk about tonight. And if faith is not really something in your DNA, if that's not something that you grew up with or really care about, then I really do encourage you to keep tuning in, because I think that you'll hear some things tonight that may help.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about so many different things that bring our faith to the surface, and that's going to be... the question might be why? Why does it bring
why bother?
it? Yeah, why does it have to be part of it? So, all right, well, so we better talk a little bit about some of the things that Rock Solid Families is doing. And so just a reminder, we're doing our parenting series. Our next one is coming up this week. We're over at Bright Elementary. That's February 27th, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So please, if you're interested, our topic is When School is Tough.
Yeah.
And this one is a great topic. Our last one was a very set audience of grandparents raising grandchildren. This one is just so much more broad. And parents, we want you to hear that I'm not just going to be talking about whether your kid is struggling with the academic side of school.
Spelling or
right.
math.
I mean, we're going to talk about some of that, but the biggest part of challenge that many of our kids have is more on the social, emotional side of things. The peer pressure, the struggles with going to school every day.
Yeah.
Butterflies in our stomach turn into panic attacks. And so we're going to be talking about those things. And then searching for, okay, what do we do with this stuff?
Now, they don't have to go to Bright Elementary, correct? It's just being hosted
this
by Bright Elementary.
This is open to the community.
Okay.
It is free of charge. So please come on out, and we will...
Do they have to sign up ahead of time?
It would help just for the sake of Bright Elementary. We'd like to have an idea, and so you can either call us at Rock Solid Families, or you can call Bright Elementary and just tell them that you're interested in going. It's just for the sake of knowing whether we need to have 50 chairs set up or 20.
Or you can email Merrill at hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org. Hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org. If you just want to shoot him an email, say, hey, I'm planning on coming. It's this Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the Bright Elementary Library.
Right. And then on March 13th, this is one of your favorite topics.
Yeah.
This is parenting in a tech-heavy world. In fact, you've just recently spoken a school to the students and some of the stuff that you discovered that they just openly shared with you. That stuff that comes across their digital screens is a bit mind-boggling. So
working with an at-risk class at a high school, and man, it's just heavy stuff that they're dealing with, and they don't know how to deal with. So we're going to talk about that March 13th. And then April 24th, you'll be back with Who's the Boss in Your House. We'll be talking about how to be an authoritative Authoritative.
Not authoritarian.
Not
we have enough of that in this world. So an authoritative parenting, and essentially is reestablishing our role to be the leaders, and what a strong leader looks like in the house.
Right.
And then I just want to put one quick plug in for our Strong Dads class. I'm wrapping up our current session of Strong Dads here, but this has been just a tremendous group. We are having so much fun with these guys. And a lot of trash talk goes on, a lot of fun.
They're still waiting for the breakfast buffet.
Oh, I know. I'm going to have to do something special. But when we wrap up that workout, then we get into a study that is just empowering as being a dad and how to be a better dad, how to be a better husband and leader in our home. So my next round will start April 6th. And so if you are interested, I do ask you to contact me on this because my space is limited, and so if you are interested or know somebody that is, have them reach out to us either at hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org, or you can call our office, which is 812-576-ROCK. That's 2625. So anyway, give us a call.
So it's called Strong Dads, and you actually had to turn some men away last time because you were full. So please put it down for April 6th, and let Merrill know that you want him to reserve you a spot. So Hun, let's talk a little bit about why this topic. Why are we even... like I said, this Eagle Country is a mix of all different backgrounds, different experiences, faith backgrounds, maybe no faith background. So why faith in the family? Why is that important?
Yeah, well, let's just try to simplify the best we can. I always like to boil things down to the bare nugget, and here's the simple of all of this. Everybody out there listening is going to go through storms.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. When we start off and we're a teenager or whatever, we can be arrogant, we can be cocky, we can just think we are all that. We can be misled to thinking we're brilliant because we make good grades at school or that we're an exceptional athlete. And so we can have this arrogance about us. And all of a sudden, life starts to dish out struggles, challenges, and you seldom find an 80-year-old man that's arrogant, do you? Most of them have been pretty broken down and humbled, and there's a reason for that. And that is, in a simple phrase, their life produces storms. And we are all going to go through those. Yeah.
I mean, whether it be a divorce, whether it be a miscarriage, whether it be bankruptcy, whether it be a terrible illness, a fire in your house, you name it, we're going to have storms. And God has never promised us that we won't have storms, but He has promised us that He can help us through the storms.
Yeah.
And Hun, Rock Solid Families, as you know, is built on the whole story of the rock of Jesus Christ and the parable that Jesus tells of the wise and foolish builders, that there were two houses, two builders, and one was built on sand and one was built on rock, but both of them had storms. So we're not saying that we're going to guarantee you, if you have faith or if you start a new practice in your home, that you are going to be sheltered from situations and storms in your life.
Yeah. And this is tough, and we do not want to make light of this situation in this conversation. We have experienced, and I'm sure many of you have, and you may be this person, that tragic things happen. I mean, if you lose a child, you could have major questions. Why? Why did this happen? That was an innocent child. What did that? If God was fair, if God was just, He would have never let that happen. My God could never let that happen. And so we start to get into that kind of thinking, and the next thing you know, we become hardened and angry at the concept of faith.
Right.
How could people have this faith or this thing they call religion when their God lets these terrible things happen? And we're going to talk a little bit about where that confusion comes from. That's, as you just said, there was never a promise that once you became a Christian or you developed a faith, there was never a promise that your problems in life would go away.
Right.
That's not at all what's promised.
Yeah.
All right.
But the peace that comes from that faith, that hope. And guys, if you're out there listening in Eagle Country and you are a mom or a dad, this world is a dark, ugly world, and there's a lot of things out there that cause stress and anxiety on our kids. And there's never been a time in this world that we have needed hope more than today. And if we don't find it on an unshakable ground that isn't going to change with the wind or the year, then we're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. John 16:33 says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world.
You're going to have trouble.
Yeah, so you're going to have trouble. So let's get over that part. And trouble is not limited to just certain kinds. Like trouble can be illness, it can be death, it can be loss of jobs. So we like to pigeonhole, like, well, you know, I have faith as long as I don't have this kind of trouble. Or I've said before, well, you know, I have faith, but I'm not sure how I would handle if I ever lost a child. No, I mean, my faith is something that I have to have no matter what the storm.
Yeah, and God can take our doubts. You know, the book of Psalms is written by a lot of David, is his words, and he doubted, he questioned, he cried out to God, and so he can take it. Yeah. He's a big God, you know.
Well, what about Job?
Yeah.
You know, what about Job? You talk about, my gosh, the storms of life just continued to pound on Job. And
if you've never read the book of Job, it's a tough book to read because so many things happened to a man who had faith, who loved God, who God loved, and still allowed this stuff to happen. But that the story on the other end is that God protected him, God blessed him, and God saw him through, gave him the strength. So yeah.
And so, you know, there are statistics on faith and the benefits of it, and generally you see things that when we have faith in our life, people with faith in their life tend to be more content. They tend to have better marriages. They tend to have a better opportunity to raise a healthier child. And when I say healthy, I mean kids who are more well-adjusted and able to handle some of those storms of life. And we don't think that that's coincidental. You know, we don't think, oh, well, that's just by chance. Those things are happening because of the power of faith.
And you know, we were raised in the church, and we kind of were that traditional church goer, but I don't think it really went into our core and changed who we were and what we did until we had children. And when we had children, they were asking questions. Why do we do what we do? What is this about? And we didn't really have a really great answer. We didn't know the Bible. We kind of just went to church and checked it off our list. And it wasn't until our children started to question and ask that we wanted more for them. And that actually was the hook that got us to go searching and find a relationship with a God who loves us instead of just a religion. Yeah.
Well, here's the fine balance that I find myself and others trying to walk through. Man has been blessed by many different inventions and bright minds and medicine and things that when we get into trouble, we don't have to go to our faith. We can make a phone call. We can go call a doctor, take a pill. And because of that, we have put more faith in man-made things. And we're not saying to not have your doctors and not have people in those
God uses them.
Life. Yeah, because God can use them. But in our arrogance, we believe that as human, we can solve everything. And in reality, man has never done that. Man still can't even figure out how a cell functions, you know, and how the universe was created. I mean, our knowledge of how we function and live is the tip of the iceberg.
Hun, that reminds me of a sermon that we listened to a couple weeks ago at Whitewater Crossing. And if you can get to an internet, go search. Tyler McKenzie was a guest speaker of ours that came, and he spoke on Nebuchadnezzar, who was one of the greatest kings in the ancient kingdom. And he had all this wealth, but when he started to take it and take credit for it himself, God quickly showed him who his boss, and kind of helped him to understand that God is God and he has power over all dominions, all kingdoms, all rulers. And Nebuchadnezzar realized that God rules and God gives. And Tyler did an awesome job of just kind of helping us to see. And he used some modern examples like Madonna and how Madonna, has won so many Grammys and has made so much money, but yet she still feels empty. Why is that?
Yeah.
You think that if you won the lottery, if you would just get this job, if you would just find this person, that everything would be okay. And you're going to find that there's this God-shaped hole in all of our hearts that only God can fill.
Yeah.
And so when we try to fill it with other stuff, whether it be money or people or careers, it's going to come up empty.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I run into with folks when I'm having discussion about faith and God is this, nobody wants to be thought of as being gullible.
Right.
Like falling for these weird stories in the Bible and these crazy miracles and stuff. And the last thing you want to be thought of is ignorant, naive, gullible.
Or like Jim Jones, who had people drink
who led
Kool-Aid
people astray.
And, they all died. That was a horrible cult experience.
Yeah, and so we have to be really careful about what is being gullible and what is having faith
and obedience,
and obedience, and what stands the test of time. Some things, some faiths sort of become almost faddish, like Jim Jones. People kind of the following starts, people start to gravitate towards it, but it has no lasting power because it's based in a man-made creation of faith. And so our faith in Christ is something that just continues to endure the generations and generations. I think there's something to that.
Sure.
Sure.
And it's about who you surround yourself with. And so if you're surrounding yourself with people who don't believe in God, who don't believe in Christ, who don't have a relationship, a faith foundation, then that's what you're filling your mind and your heart with. That's what you're hearing about. Take a look around. Look at the stress that folks are under. Look at the depression that folks are under. Look at the hopelessness. Is that what you want for you and your family, or could there be something more?
Yeah. We see people go through difficult times, and one of the things that brought our faith more to light was illness that I spoke on in a previous show about anxiety.
Right.
And that actually dropped me in particular, but our family to our knees.
Yep.
And there's a crossroads that happens when you get to these types of challenges. And the crossroads is being angry and mad at the world and why is this happening to me? And
turning callous and hardened.
Turning hardened and callous. Or surrendering and saying, God, pull me through. I need you. I need everything that you're offering. And I've seen people who have lost children, who have become hardened and angry and mad, and they live in this prison.
Oh.
And I've seen people who have lost children, and they are sad and upset, and all of a sudden they turn that into an incredible power.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a charity, maybe it's a movement, maybe it's a purpose.
Yep.
And that is the difference between faith and not faith.
Yeah. The Bible says that every knee shall bow and every tongue confess his name. And so I feel like that's going to happen on the day of judgment. I personally want to do it on my own, and surrender. In this life, it's a lot less painful than being knocked to your knees, whether it be through a storm or a crisis or in the day of judgment when it's too late.
Yeah.
And so, for you and your family, just keep listening because I think God has a different plan.
Yeah. Well, hey, so let's talk a little bit about, for you listeners out there, we can talk about the importance of faith, but how about the practice of faith?
Yep.
And how do we put that into our homes? And how do we put substance behind that with our kids, especially when they become the teenager and they're questioning everything that you're doing? So how do we do that? So what are some of your thoughts there, hon? Our house, and by the way, this is kind of an ongoing practice, right?
Sure.
We don't have it perfect by any means.
Yeah. So I was in ministry for 20 years, and first of all, I was a children's minister, so I'd work with a lot of parents who were like, I can't get him to come, he doesn't want to go to class, he won't do this, he won't do that. Well, then you look at mom and dad aren't practicing what they preach. They're not sold out to this idea of faith being important. So your kids are watching you. So if this isn't something that you value and that you practice, they're not going to do it, especially if one parent is at home and one parent is going to church. It's really tough. I want to stay home with dad. Yeah. I don't want to go. Mom's not going. And so we've got to really be careful of the messages we send through our actions, not just our words.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said here about when all of a sudden you've drifted away, and not just from church, but your faith. You're handing things over to God. You've drifted away, and then all of a sudden a major storm hits. And the next thing you know, you're going to church, that's great. But what is that saying to your kids, that you only go to church when you feel like your life's in a storm, or you only pray when you're in a major storm? And so part of our
God can use that.
He does, for sure. But the message that your kid is getting can also be very confusing. Like,
if it's back and forth.
Yeah, that you're not committed. It's almost hypocritical. You only do this when you're really struggling. And so the consistency, that's why faith is a practice. We talk about practice your faith.
Yeah.
And that's the daily part.
So part of faith is practicing it with other people, the church. And so it used to be that church was something that people did every week. If you missed, it was rare. Now, going half the time, if you go once a month, people think, oh, I go to church, or twice a month. That's not going to tell your kids this is important, this is a priority, because you let anything under the sun kind of get in the way. And so it's got to be something that you say, okay, we're sold out to this is important.
Yeah.
For our family.
One of the things that we have to teach our kids is, and we practice this through our talk and through our prayers, is teaching them to have a vision beyond this earth. And pie in the sky, dreamy thinking. We if you ask, if you could have one thing in this world, and you hear the ultimate answer, world peace. And those are awesome things, world peace, and no more hunger, no war, no greed, no crime. It's never happened. It's never happened on this earth. Okay, you can at best get pockets of this stuff that last for a temporary time, because the human condition is one of selfishness, and at some point it creeps back in, and then you get these things called wars and devastation and all that. And so teaching our kids that, we're going to live with a faith here on earth as to get to something beyond earth.
A life eternal.
Yeah, an eternal
something
life.
Besides this life.
Yeah, and when we start, that's where we get hope.
Yep.
Like, no matter how bad my condition is here, I'm not living for here. I'm living for something.
This is just a blip on the radar screen.
Yeah. And so to teach your kids to live beyond earth.
And I want to talk a little bit about the blessing that comes for when you find a church home and you plant your family there. We've seen that with our kids, and this was one of the greatest blessings for us, is that our boys, and now our other 3 children that are in our home, had other people speaking into their life that were speaking hope, that were speaking positive messages, that was speaking truth. And so when we were the bad guys and we were disciplining them, or they were mad at us, there were other people still, a youth minister, a children's minister, other families that all of a sudden have influence. I challenge every parent out there to ask their kids, if you have children under the age of 18 at home, if you had a serious thing you didn't know what to do with or how to deal with it, and you didn't feel comfortable coming to mom and dad, who would you go to?
Yeah.
And see what they say. If it's a 12-year-old friend, that's a bad news. If it's a parent of a friend that goes to church with you, or they have a faith, or they have common values, then, because our boys had men in their life they could name, and they didn't even have to think really hard. They had men in their life that maybe they've already come to, or maybe they kind of lean on or get to talk to. And wow, that was so powerful for us to say, hey, they're going to be okay.
Yeah, and these are men that our boys still talk to,
as adults,
that we don't even know about in private conversation, because they rest on some some of the wisdom,
Yep.
some of the guidance that is faith-based.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and it is definitely something we have encouraged, and we want to continue.
Our kids need that.
Yeah.
Our kids need that. They are dealing with so much stress, so many overwhelming things, and they don't know where to go with them, and they're afraid mom and dad will take their phone away or cut their friends off. And so if they had someone else that they could go to, man, just the stress would be so much more relieved.
Yeah. So there's so much power in faith. And one last statement about just like, well, why would I have faith? One of the other arguments that I tend to hear is, faith and religion is the reason why we have wars and all the fighting. You know what? There's truth to that. But I would contend to say that that is not the faith that's caused that. That's selfishness. That's the human side. Because when you really look at what faith does and the fruits of the Spirit, and you look around and you start to understand that, you look at the number of hospitals, schools, missions, charities, disaster relief that have all stems back to the faith.
Yeah.
I mean, this great country has its roots in an incredible faith. And when you look at our medical system that we have, not our insurance woes, but on what we have had, how this country comes to the relief of other
taking care of one another.
That we take care of it. That is faith-based in its root. And so I challenge you that, there's bad. There's bad in churches. There's bad all because
we're human.
That's human, right? That's human. But get beyond that and understand what the spirit of the faith is.
And I tell folks all the time, if you're struggling with a priest or a minister, I mean, I've had so many people give excuses to why they've given up on God, then you had the wrong person on the pedestal. If somebody's let you down, then get over it. They're human, and that's what humans do. But our God does not let us down.
Yeah. So we're getting ready to get to the tail end of our show here.
We could be here all day.
Yeah, so it's a great topic, and it's one that, like we said, it's a practice.
Important. Our families need it. Our homes need it. Our community needs it.
So a little bit of a challenge or some homework for this week. Mom and Dad, we are going to challenge you to take a snapshot view of your faith and the faith that's in your house right now.
Right. How
it's being projected. All right, how much we might be allowing the world to kind of filter in and taint
take over
this very simple Word of God and the simple faith. Remember, faith is very simple, that's where that peace and hope comes from because you just kind of let things go.
Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So if you could see it, then it wouldn't be faith.
Right.
Because you would already know. So faith is kind of taking that chance that there's something bigger out there. And trust me, you want to take a chance because our lives have been flipped upside down when we turned from religion to a relationship and when faith became a real active living thing we did in our home. And we're not perfect. We do not have it all together. But we know when we mess up, it's because we've kind of forgotten who's on the pedestal. Who is it that we're worshiping?
And when we go through the challenges, which we do, that once we get a grip on that, we all of a sudden can find some peace. And that is so reassuring. You take that deep breath and say, you know what? We don't know how it's going to be okay, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
And I will say, though, that comes through seeing it happen. And so the more you surround yourself with people who believe what that is and what God is and what he can do, then all of a sudden it's energizing. It's contagious because that trust and that hope and that peace starts to ripple out into you and your family and your friends. And then you want more of that. It's a growth addiction. Speaking of addiction, hon, next week we got a tough topic.
Yes, we do.
Of addiction, but also
and the families
and the family.
Of addiction.
So
that's going to be a big part of that show.
If your family has had other things on the pedestal besides the Lord, and whether it be alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, whatever, stay tuned next Sunday night at 7:30 because we'll be talking more about that.
And that leads me to some of the storms that we're talking about. Addiction is such a storm. And, in all of our work with people of addiction and stuff, I've never heard an addict say, I finally got clean when I became an atheist, or I finally got happiness when I gave up on
Peace.
God. No, we don't hear that. We don't hear that. We hear all the time, I got my life right and I accepted Christ and I developed a faith, and there's so much power in that to overcome these crazy addictions. So, well, we need to wrap it up. Big thank you to Maxwell Construction, Buffalo Wings and Rings, Greendale Cinemas, and La Rosa Pizza. Tune in this Sunday and check us out for our next show that's coming up. We thank you guys for listening. Let's make it a great night and a great week.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard this evening, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinema, and Maxwell Construction. If you have questions you'd like answered on air or want to chime in on something you heard this evening, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next Sunday evening at 7:30 for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merrill and I, thanks for tuning in on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.